Welcome back to Wordfully Yours. This is a plot hole. My name is Jeff. I write as J.S. Johnston. I am the author of The Man in the Disappearing Suit, coming out soon. Tuesday, July 2nd. We'll be having a live stream to celebrate. Hope you can be there.
I'm Harlan Deschamps. I write YA mostly. I don't have anything published yet, but hopefully sometime soon. I do a lot of work with Highlights Foundation. So if you are in the Kidlit arena, you might see me there. So
This is Harlan's first time, so we're very glad she's here. Not to beat a dead horse, but we keep seeing articles about book bannings, especially here in Florida. It's very important to me because I live here, and you want to keep a good place. MSN.com. There's an article. Florida school district bans book called "Ban This Book." Oddly enough, Florida school district voted to ban a book about banning books in May. The irony isn't lost on those criticizing the move. The Tallahassee Democrat reported in the Indian River School Board voted to remove "Ban This Book" by Alan Gratz 3-2, going against a decision by the district's book review committee to keep it. Yeah. There's been Florida is I actually think it says in this article, Florida has around somewhere around 70 to 80. Here it is. PEN America issued a report in April saying that Florida is responsible for 72% of the books that have been pulled from the nation's schools in the first half of the current school year. Most of them are about LGBTQ plus identities, include characters of color, address race and racism, or include depictions of sexual experiences in the most broadest interpretation of the understanding. So that's the important part. There's a lot going on down here in Florida that basically shouldn't be happening. It's mostly politically driven. It has nothing to do with the safety of the children.
Nope. And I mean, this is a big hot topic every time I go to highlights. Even a lot of just the online workshops too, when we have open discussions, because of course these are children's authors that go to highlights, and they're like greatly affected. With this one in particular, I mean, it being like the first one that this group even reviewed, it's really funny because it just seems like they're not even reading them. They're just kind of scanning for keywords or whatever. And,
the article actually explains. Sorry to cut you off. The article actually explains that this is driven by this. I forget the name again. Yada yada yada.
It's Moms for Liberty or something.
That's
right?
it.
Is
Thank
that what
you.
you're talking about?
That's it. It's actually Moms for Liberty. It's because they banned this. They banned a book because it mentions other banned books. The group wrote on X. It's truly absurd. Written comments by the district book review committee were mainly positive, and Grants had handled the subject matter well. The selection of this book as the first material this committee is formally reviewing represents situational irony better than any lesson I have ever taught. One committee member wrote. Moms for Liberty has been very active in enforcing their ideals on the rest of the world. Basically, they heard that there's LGBTQ material in this book, and they submitted it for review. They basically waved their arms and said, "Hey, look, this book should be banned." It even says it right here, ban this book. So what the school district had to do was take it off the shelves, review it, and then make the decision.
Right.
So ban this book got banned, but for a short time.
And I mean, like, you have to wonder how much time and resources are being wasted, like reviewing these books, like every time something gets submitted. And, it was funny because I actually didn't realize. I had heard that DeSantis changed the law a little bit because there were so many people that were submitting books that didn't have children in the schools. And I'd heard initially that they just made it so people who didn't have kids in the schools couldn't submit, but is not the case. Like reading this, it says that they're just limited to one book a month, which is still 12 books a year from how many, thousands of people, which is kind of sad. But I mean, why can't like people, like parents even make the decision and just say, like, contact a school and say, hey, can you just like not let my kid take this book out if they really have a problem with it? And instead of, affecting so many other, people that have different beliefs, but,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I understand people's concern about what kids read and the ideas they get in
right,
their head and yada yada yada. Basically, you don't want your kid reading a book on how cool it is to jump off bridges. I get that.
right,
However, this is not what that's about.
exactly,
They're wanting to remove LGBTQ identities from their view. They want them. It is as if, not to get into their heads, but it is as if they want them to, if they identify as LGBTQ, to not feel okay with that.
right. And I mean, that's, I feel like that's what I grew up with, and that's part of, and not that my parents or whatever necessarily did that, but for me, I didn't have, any kind of books that explored different things like sexualities, and not sex necessarily, but just like, what are these feelings I'm feeling? What does this mean or that mean? And who am I? Right. And it wasn't until way later in life that, even through kids' books that are not inappropriate for the age level they're written for, right? They're dealing with topics that are appropriate. It helps so much in that discovery phase, of learning who you are and not feeling like, oh no, like I should be ashamed of who I am, which does a lot of stuff to you mentally, like,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who's accepting of it and who's not, like, that, like, there's another whole discussion to be had of like, you can say like, oh, I am having gay feelings or whatever, but my religion doesn't allow that. That's a whole different
Yeah.
discussion, right? But that's for the individual to then like it, and it still helps, like, even knowing that and addressing it and naming it still helps in those regards too, because you can say like, okay, I can identify this and now I can deal with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not saying anyone should or shouldn't do, you have to make that decision up for yourself, but yeah, like, I mean, it can be so helpful. And that's one of the big things, like with highlights. And one of the reasons I,
Mm-hmm.
work with them a lot is because they're very, need diverse books, and we need that representation. And
Exactly.
even it mentioned there's a lot of books with Black main characters that they're banning as well. um, and not having, again, the diversity and the representation, it makes it feel like it's shameful to be Black, it's shame,
Yeah.
like, or to be friends with those people or something. You're causing more division amongst people, and like young people are very impressionable and everything, so yeah.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that. When you're a kid, I mean, as everybody who has been a kid understands, your top motivation and your entire existence is just to feel normal and accepted. Um,
Exactly.
that's your absolute. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, like if I met a genie and I could have three wishes, my first one was to be just like everyone else. I just wanted to
Right.
be accepted. I just wanted to be normal. That was my top want as a kid. And there's a lot of these kids who are getting bullied and ridiculed because they're not.
Yeah.
And just including this kind of representation in these books, just being LGBTQ or neurodiverse or something, tells these kids that it's okay to be that way. There's nothing wrong with you. It's
Right.
fine. You are the way you're supposed to be. Um, but these people who are insistent on banning these books, um, they're not helping. I mean,
No.
not sure what exactly the motivation is, other than to make kids not feel like it's okay to be who they are. But that's what they're doing.
I mean, I think it comes down to fear. Like it stems from fear, right? Like
Yeah.
it's this worry that like if they are exposed to it, then they might start thinking about it if they
Oh
weren't yet
yeah.
or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's like I was actually just thinking about that the other day. Do you remember once upon a time when Ellen came out of the closet and all these people were certain that if her kids watch Ellen, they would turn gay?
Yep. Yep.
I
And I
was
don't
actually
think
still
that, I
wondering
mean,
if they
I
still
think she
think
kind of
that.
had the opposite effect. No, just kidding. But no, like, I mean, yeah, it's the same. I feel like it's every time. And, that's, you know, my, my son, of course he's 8. He has no, like, he's not thinking in that way at all right now. Like it's
Hmm.
just, he loves his friends, period. Like that's it. Like that's all he knows about love and like and his family and whatever.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about like, oh, who can I date, whatever. But we have the conversations like, just to tell him like, that person, feels this way and that's okay, and this
Mhm.
person feels that way and that's okay, like it's as long as people are happy and they're not hurting
Mhm.
anyone, right? Like then it's fine.
Right. And
And
it's also meant for everyone else to normalize that state of
right.
being. Like I keep going back. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge Trekkie, so I always go back to the original Star Trek series where Uhura. I mean, it was rare that a black person was on TV, especially a main character, especially an officer on a ship,
Yep.
right? And the whole point of her being there was to normalize diversity in the workplace. Me
Yep.
not being very diverse needed that, right? I needed to
Right.
see this as a normal thing on TV every week on a show that I watched, because as I grew up and entered that diverse workplace, this is normal to me. I mean, I started out with
Exactly.
this being normal, and that's what it did for me. Even though I wasn't directly affected by what was going on at the time, I still benefited from it. Um,
And especially in these places like towns that are smaller and you don't have a lot of diversity, like
right.
where I grew up. And I know some of the places down in Florida are similar too, where it's just like, when you get into the smaller areas, it's more
Yeah.
rural and there's just not, you don't have as much exposure to LGBTQ like openly,
Right. Yeah.
and other cultures and races and everything and religions.
Hmm.
So like having that in the content that you're watching or reading is so important just for just for that exposure and to take more steps towards let's accept everyone and love everyone and be comfortable with everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, especially when we're in a small town, or people who just don't feel okay with coming out with that stuff. Um, I like to say so much of what's out there, people only know because they see it on TV, or read it in books, or watch it in movies. Like that's their exposure to stuff. They don't go searching the internet to study something. Their knowledge comes from. Uh, it's kind of like a socialized uh, knowledge base. What you know comes from the people you know and what they talk about.
Right.
So if your day to day experience isn't LGBTQ or people of color or anything other than what you are, if that's not your day to day experience, the only way you're going to come into contact with it is through your fiction. That's books, that's movies, that's TV, that's all that stuff. Um,
Right.
so it by removing these books from school bookshelves and public libraries, they're removing that from people's experience, and that means they're not going to be able to benefit from that. So they're basically setting themselves up for racism, for homophobia, for transphobia, for um, uh, for all that stuff. They're basically setting people up to be jerks to other people. I mean, the world is a small place. There's like what 8 billion people on the planet, and we all have to get along. The only way we're going to be able to do that is by understanding each other. And this is one of the easiest ways to be able to do that is just by putting that stuff out there so that people can experience it.
Yeah, and I mean own voices too. That's why own voices are so important,
Yeah.
so that we're getting the accurate representations of those people who are different from ourselves. And I mean, like, so I had a conversation with Nikki Grimes about book banning because she's very big name in children's literature. She's published a ton of stuff, and she has a lot of banned books. And
Oh.
she just released a autobiography that was banned, and she is Black,
Mhm.
and I believe she said, I haven't read it yet. I have it on my pile, my giant pile of to be read. But I believe she said that she had some sexual assault content in it. Not anything, graphic, but
Mhm.
that was something that she dealt with in her life, and this is her young life. So it's really like an important book for, and especially for kids who've gone through that, like to see that they're not alone, and someone else has actually suffered, and it's a true book. It's not even fiction. It's just, this is what happened to her. And it's so sad that that's being banned, and then these kids are not able to see, like, this person had this happen, that makes me a little more normal or whatever. And she was able to come out of it and,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
like do something. And yeah, it's really, and especially like, like with her, I talked to her about, like, because someone asked her if she noticed, like, an uptick in sales or something like that, like when the book got banned. Because I think some people have this thing, well, once it gets banned, then more people hear about it and you get more sales. And no, there's, like she said, there's no correlation between, like, sales or anything
well,
like that. But the sad thing is for these kids, like, a lot of these kids don't have access to books any other way except for their school library. Like, they don't even, like, they can't necessarily go to a library in town, and they can't just buy books. And that's the only way that they are getting exposure, other than like TV or something like that. But yeah, it's just, that's the real tragedy. And that was what she was really upset about, is that the people who need that content just are not getting it.
yeah, I agree. And that's just like when I was a kid. I mean, the only access I got to books was the school library. I mean, there
Yeah,
was the city library, but I was a kid. How was I supposed to get there unless my parents dropped me off? It just wasn't going to happen.
exactly.
So if it wasn't in the school library, then I just wasn't going to read it. I mean, I remember I was actually assigned multiple book reports when I was a kid. The first thing I did was go to the school library, and all the kids had them already checked out, and that was it. That was my option. So I
Right.
just didn't do the book report. Um, I mean, that's because if it's not in the school library, chances are kids aren't going to read it. I mean, a lot of
No.
kids will have parents buy them whatever books they want, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them just don't have the disposable income to be spending on random books that they might like or they might not like.
And books are expensive, and it adds up quick.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
I
especially
mean, luckily, I think my son had, like, they had like a school wide reading of a book, and they actually made it a PTO initiative and raised the money and then purchased the book for everyone, so that it couldn't, no one was left out, which was
that's cool.
great, because it's not like, oh, all these other kids have access to it, but you didn't get it.
Yeah,
So they did make sure that everyone could be a part of that school wide reading.
that's
But
cool.
you're absolutely correct. Like with, classes, individual classes, unless it's provided in some way, which usually comes out of the teacher's budget these days, how is anyone going to get access to the book unless it's at the library, the school library?
Right, that's it. So I mean, well, it's cool that they bought the book for the kids. Because I mean, I sure as hell didn't get to read it because those are my options. So it's cool that somebody figured that out and did something about it and made it happen. I like that.
At least for that one.
At least for that one. At least for that.
Right.
It's a start. It's an example that somebody can say, look, yeah,
Right.
it's a little good thing that happened.
Right.
All right, that is about 20 minutes, so we're going to call it here.
All right.
Thanks for joining, Harlan. All the links to all the things will be down in the video description. By the time you see this, my book, The Man in the Disappearing Suit, will be releasing the next day, Tuesday, July 2nd. I'm very excited about it. You are all invited to the live stream that we will do to celebrate the book release. It's going to be awesome. If you stuck around this long, you're the best audience in all of YouTube, and I love you, and I hope you all get raises and invited to pizza day. And
How do you do a heart? I can't do the heart. I don't know.
it's like this.
There we go.
All right, see you guys next week.
Oh, look.